All right, guys, welcome to the IEPPV Live. This is a live webinar where we bring on a guest, we sit and we chat, we talk, we hang out. This is our third IEPPV Live, I believe. We've got Adam Reid with us here today. Adam is going to be talking about all things creative in Adam's universe, which is going to be really exciting. He's done several exciting projects that he'll talk about. Once we get to Adam, we'll get into more of that. Myself, I'm Troy Miller with SpicyJello.com. You can check out any of my stuff there, but you guys already know that. We also have got Nick Seth-Smith, which is the president of IEPPV. He's going to be giving us a quick update and helping us in the background run this event, as will a couple other people in the background. For those of you who haven't participated with us before on an IEPPV Live event, if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see there's a couple icons. You've got a Q&A button and you've got a chat button. The chat button is for you guys to talk amongst yourselves. You can talk with us. Adam, you can talk to the people. They can talk to you. The Q&A, that's not for chatting. What that is if you throw a question in there, that'll ping us and let us know that there's a question that you have. And once we answer that, it'll stay in there. That way you can always go back and see that. We are also streaming this live on YouTube as an experiment to see if we can actually do this more than once. So far, this is number 2. So hopefully that's working. So we are going to get into this here very quickly. Nick, from the IEPPV front, what is going on with IEPPV?
Thank you, Troy, and welcome everybody. So today, as you know, we have the awesome Adam Reid. Tomorrow, we have our image review, and we'll have Kai Gradert as our reviewer, along with Troy, and I'm sure I'll be in the background heckling and generally being a nuisance. But it's a great opportunity to bring your images along, learn, go through a competition process without the stress of competition, and really see how they can improve. Then moving forwards to our general meeting on April 17th, we have the awesome Jim Doyle coming in to talk about architecture. Jim, for those of you that don't know, is an incredible architectural photographer based in Orange County. He shoots for a lot of real estate developers and does really amazing stuff. He did a workshop for us about 3 or 4 years ago, which was very, very impressive. And it's been a while since he's been back with that hat on. And he'll be talking at the Old Spaghetti Factory. We also offer our mentorship sessions there. So if you would like to spend some time with one of our more experienced photographers, just contact Rebecca, sign up there, and we can get you some time to study whatever it is you want, image, little review of your portfolio or particular tips and techniques. Moving forwards, then we have some more stuff coming up in May. In particular, image competition is next month. That'll be our second online event. The first one was a couple little bumps in the road, but overall very, very successful. I think we've ironed everything out, and next time should be a rip-roaring success. And then we have more stuff coming up in May that I won't bore you with. Let's get back to the real content here. Adam, Troy, take it away. I'm going to go mute.
Thank you, Nick. I also got another friend of mine coming here soon, Freddie Sedano, who is, like I said, he's our local resident videographer, and he is a huge fanboy of Adam's since I showed him the book. So I said, Freddie, come on in. If he's got any Q&A, he'll pop in as well. So let me just, so from the information that I have here, Adam, it says that you are the co-founder of the production company Bodega Studios in New York,
That's
right?
True. That is true.
Where you drive your original brand through content of oh, there he is. There's Freddie Sedano.
I've been here. I couldn't figure out how to get it to work.
Awesome. So you do production and post and development, and you do the Tiny Chef Show, and you've got your book, this right here, The Adventures of Barry and Joe, which I got to tell you, right away, big laughs. I mean, I can't wait to get through the rest of that. So that's super cool.
Thanks so much.
So let's just, you know what, let's just dive right in, Adam. We were talking sort of in the virtual green room about some of your new projects that are coming up. And I think if you'd share that with us, that would be great, because it gives us sort of an idea what you do and what you're into, and we'll continue from there.
Awesome. Well, I mean, that's such a big starting point. I mean, it could almost be anything, but I'll say a couple things. So like a snapshot of what's happening right now. Thanks, obviously, for having me on. And it's late, for me. I'm on the East Coast. Everyone may not know, and of course, I've got little kids, so I've been up since 5:30 a.m. East Coast time. I don't know what my name is, or if I'm even able to impart actual wisdom, but I can tell you, at no point in my life as a creative, at any stage, when I started or even now, and I always feel like I just started, even though clearly I haven't just started. I never quite feel like I know everything, or like I totally know what's going on or what's going to happen next. And there's a lot of times where when I do, it's usually because I've been here before, and it's something like, it's actually old hat. I imagine like anything you do a lot, you're just like, oh, I got this down. I'm ready for a bigger challenge. So for me, I'm just at the cusp of having all these big challenges. And so, the days are going by very, very quickly. And the quick glimpse is I'm working on iZod commercials. I do I'm the writer, director, and then voiceover for the iZod, campaign. And this is, if you know iZod, it's like fashion.
Right.
And, really preppy polos and frankly, kind of a very, forgive me, it's kind of a douchey brand, it's like, it's not in style anymore to be like super preppy. And even that lifestyle type of way that they sold clothing for years, this is like 20 years maybe, it doesn't really work anymore. So what I get to do, and what I've done, and I'm going to shoot next week on Sunday with Colin Jost and Aaron Rodgers. Colin Jost, you might know, is from SNL. He's like the Weekend Update co-anchor. And Aaron Rodgers, I've never heard of. I don't know what he does or who he is, but somebody somewhere can, I'm sure, tell me. Just kidding. So what's really fun about this campaign is we get to really make fun of ourselves and their comedy spots. And so we're in pre-production on those. So that's a lot of my time today has been taken up with that. And then the Tiny Chef Show is a stop motion. We don't really talk about it in the terms of stop motion because it's really about this tiny herbivore creature named the chef. And he's just a force of nature, and he really has ideas of his own. And he lives in a tree stump, and he cooks and he sings, but he's very much an influencer in the world. And all of our creative powers, I have two partners, co-creators who made the Tiny Chef Show. Rachel Larson, who's a Jedi stop motion animator. She's worked on a lot of films I'm sure we might all recognize that I love, like Isle of Dogs and Coraline and Paranorman, all these really beautiful stop motion films. And Ozzy, who's actually our cinematographer and a photographer who also works on them. So we're using all these tricks to try and make Chef real in the world. And so if you're into the Tiny Chef Show, you can go to Instagram and you can see daily content and the animations and craziness. And then he's kind of everywhere. And he had a holiday album, and you can hit ringtones, and he's got a Tiny Chef shop. And my phone has I didn't mean to flash everybody though. Apparently it just went, my phone got excited. A Tiny Chef, iPhone
nice.
cover. So this is like a side project that's now becoming like the main project. And there's so many aspects. Like we could spend an hour talking about what that is, and really the developing there's a couple of things you can get a lot out of me tonight, and then I'll stop talking for a moment and listen. But like what I've become kind of good at is over time, and it's mostly for working for brands. And so I think we could go in a time machine and talk a little bit about how I got into this position where I can make commercials and make films and make books. But because it's not really always that way. But I feel like, I'll at the intersection of our favorite things, the things that make us the most exciting, the things that we nerd out over, is a shortcut to our voice. And I think what my job is in life, and I think all of our job in life, is to know what turns us on and know what makes us happy. And you suddenly have a new economy once you know and recognize those things, because I lucked into a career in creativity and it's become a job. But the truth is, the things that excite me most creatively are the new things that I've never tried before. It's always something wildly different. And knowing what it is that excites you and knowing what turns you on, you suddenly have an economy. It's like, did anyone ever see Free Solo? So like Free Solo is that movie about the guy who just goes like, it's totally suicidal, right? He just climbs straight up the wall and he's like got no ropes or anything. And he's just going up like straight up El Capitan, right? Okay,
right.
yeah.
Free climbing, yeah.
El Cap, no fucking problem. Okay, so, you know, you can do that. If that's what you want to do, you can live in a trailer and like he does. And you can go anywhere and you're like, makes you happy. So knowing why you want to do these things, this art that we want to do, what it is about storytelling or creativity in general that you get off on itself is a big, big victory, because I've been guaranteed success by following that path sort of forever. I'm going to stop talking now for a second.
No, it's great because what it is, it just prompts so many more questions than what I have. But, you know, it's the idea that as a creative, you're constantly pulled, right? And side projects, as you mentioned, your side project is turning into one of your main projects. And that's awesome, because usually the main projects incorporate something that you love and pays the bills and gets you down the road. But then, you know, you've got to still feed the artist, right? You've got to still, you know, be creative and create things. And then from that, oftentimes comes bigger projects and things of that nature. So, which leads me to really sort of my first question is, you know, how did you get started in the field that you're in now? Because as a creative, you probably dabbled and played and you did all these things that somehow pinnacled to where you are now. And then that gives you a little bit more freedom to experiment too.
Well, and I don't just say this like self-deprecatingly, but it's genuinely humbling. We're never anywhere. There is no mountaintop where you don't get to the top and not realize that you're at the bottom of a much larger mountain. And it's just a total reality. So right. What's really interesting is, so I woke up one morning, and this is a true story. So everything is true, but this is like crazy. So this is really what you're asking for. It's like, I woke up one morning 20 years ago in Los Angeles. I was living in Santa Monica, and my roommate had slept with a producer at Comedy Central. Okay? I'm not going to use names because this is being streamed, but this is real. So we're having, and I love these people. So we're having cereal, and we're cracking each other up, me and this woman, and she's just delightful. And she's like, you should come work at Comedy Central. And I said, oh, okay. And at that time, just so you know, I was like a very terrible actor living in LA, not acting at all, but working at the phone company and doing anything I could to just make ends meet. And I always loved playing with cameras and telling stories, and I always did theater. And I'm you know, supernaturally geeky and hyper excitable. And in Los Angeles, I think for me, and I didn't know it at the time, you know, that's a little repellent, I think, because you're just like, you're just like a hyper spaz ball, you know, like, great, good for you in the business. It's like, good luck with that, buddy. But what's interesting is,
fit into our group then, and you're all part of the same tribe. Yeah.
Right at home. So cut to, I'm having a story with her. She says, you should come work at Comedy Central. I don't know anybody in New York, but I sleep on her couch in Hoboken, and I interview with her boss, and I got a 6-week PA gig at Comedy Central. And I got rid of my adult car and whatever adult furniture I thought I had in Santa Monica, and I moved to New York for the 6 weeks trial gig. And so there I found myself in the promo department. And I'm doing some of the things I kind of done in LA, but just on my own, like farting around. You know, Dave, we could talk, my brother, and we could talk about, you know, I'd make a movie for something. I'd pick up the camera and we'd edit with VCRs. You know, it was terrible. All the crap you do.
So you were hired to go in and were you creating content with them at that time?
Oh God, no! I was a production assistant, so it was my worst. It was everyone's worst nightmare. You know, it's like I'm quite literally 20 and 21, and my first run as a PA was to go pick up some DVD like at Tower Records where they still had those downtown, and I literally lost the money that they gave me like on the trip. And then I ran into like some actress at Cal Arts. I went to 1 year at Cal Arts because remember I was a terrible actor. And she's like, you know, you know, I didn't really even know her that well, but I was like totally intimidated. And I'm like, you know, melting because I lost this thing. And I'm explaining I'm on my first day as a PA. The worst experience. But you know, something else happened. And that was just the magic of New York. And this is where this gets exciting. I was home. And I knew it. And there was something about, you have to follow your mojo, right? So I didn't know that I was going to find my mojo in New York. But what's neat is, you know, you get these vibes and you're like, I had already made that leap. So maybe this was just wishful thinking, but I didn't need to rearrange my whole life. That could have been horrible and I could have just come back to California. But instead, it's like, I felt that I was always belonged here. And it was amazing because at Comedy Central so I wasn't writing, I wasn't directing, I wasn't producing, I was a production assistant. But this was a magical moment. So the next one, they're asking you to screen shit. They're like, hey, screen this terrible show, screen this comedy thing. You're just like give screening notes, like watch it. And like when funny things happen, write it down with the numbers that are on the screen. It's like, I can do that. You know, so I'm like, what's it for? And they're like, oh, well, this stupid game show's moving to midnight. And I was like, oh, well, okay. So you're going to need to make a promo about that, right? Can I try writing the promo? And they're like, yeah, knock yourself out. You know, like, well, you're going to try writing the promo. So of course I write promos. So I wrote a couple promos. I've never done that before, but I was like, what's a promo? It's a commercial. I can do this. So suddenly and then they go, they say, oh, this is okay. We're going to go make it. I was like, oh, can I sit in the edit? So it started with, can I sit in the edit? And I kid you not. So like maybe 3 months later, and this is because I was kind of a pushy kid. And I thought I was Spielberg for like half a minute. And they had opened up ideas to like live action ideas. Like we need ideas to promote this show. I came up with an idea and they said, we're going to go shoot this. So this kind of the same thing happens because I could write. I turned out, oh, I can write. And by writing, so the first thing they're like, we're going to go make this. I'm like, oh, and I don't know any better. I said, can I direct it? And they laughed at me because to them, I think I'm 12, you know, I must be 12. And they're like, no. But here's what they did. They did because they gave me like their most seasoned director, producer person on it with me. And then that person just kind of liked me enough to get out of the way. So we were on it together and I'm on the shoot and it was kind of my first shoot. And I'm still really, the truth is, and this is why I just feel really lucky. I'm a production assistant working at Comedy Central at a funny time where they were willing to just shine some light on me. So this poured fuel on the creative fire and probably created the perfect little, you know, moment for me to just take even bigger leaps. Because at this point I've moved to New York and that worked out. And not only did that work out, but now I'm actually directing for Comedy Central. And I thought I could take the career path. I'm like, well, I don't know anyone who's gone on to be like a filmmaker. Like I wanted to be a filmmaker and, you know, I see myself as this guy who can write and direct and do everything through promos. But then I thought, oh, Spike Jonze, right? We all know who Spike Jonze is, right? Who directed Her and Being John Malkovich and a lot of other amazing films. So adaptation, which I love. So Spike Jonze was made promos at MTV. And then we know him from the Sabotage video from the Beastie Boys, right? And then that begat, you know, his music videos, other music videos that really, so his commercial career sort of turned into his feature film career. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe that is a road. And the truth is it's not. It hasn't happened once since. But,
So
yeah.
So what you really did was, which it's hard to do, right? I mean, it's really hard to do. One, you know, fortune favors the prepared mind, right? Like you have to be, you have to have some skill, because if you didn't have some skill along the way, they would have kicked you out the door. Like, you had to perform, right? But you took a chance. I mean, there's that. You got to be able to take a chance. You got to be able to recognize. You got to recognize the opportunity. And then if when you said, hey, can I write that piece? And if it sucked, that would have been the end of that.
No, it wouldn't have. Here's the reality. You're half right. The part where you're right is, you had to have some talent, right? Only kind of. Here's what you have to be prepared for. This is hard and this is real. So for what it's worth, you have to learn, you have to eat shit for breakfast. You're just hearing about the yeses. It was like, I throw myself against the wall like spaghetti every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I pitch 1,000 ideas so that I can get 2 through. Right. And what the things you don't hear about is The Adventures of Barry and Joe, the graphic novel that you were holding up a moment ago. It's sort of like what a cool thing that it exists, but even it has a trail of tears, which is there's everything is this roller coaster. And what you'd have to do is you have to actually you have to lay the failures at the feet of the monster. And what happens is once you get, like, if that's my worst fear, some sort of rejection, or that they wouldn't like the script, right, at Comedy Central, or that I'm not funny, guess what? I'm all those things. So I'm not, but I'm also, I've become much better and sometimes great at those things by virtue of all the failures. So nothing really ever works the way I think it should or I want it to, but I learn from all of it. And it was the swinging for the fences it's like Babe Ruth, right? It's like every time I point, but it usually doesn't work out. And it was like, but every once in a while you look like a fucking genius, and that's fantastic. So that's what you're looking for.
You got to put yourself in the blender, right? You got to throw yourself at it.
Yeah, I honestly think that is, and then there's the joy, and then the true secret is, so yes, take chances, be bold, and maybe it'll be rewarded, and it won't happen at all if you're not bold. But more important than all of that, and this is just the truth, because I was talking about the Spike Jonze trajectory to point out that it didn't really work. What works is loving the process, finding people you love to collaborate with like it's a band, and creating opportunities to jam, using the band analogy.
Right.
Because that's all that there is. And the more at bat, just like a band, the more at bat, whether it's individual or a team sport like filmmaking, right? Whether it's writing and you're just like, no, I need to write this screenplay, or I need to write this novel or this graphic novel or this play. Or if you're making a film and you're like, no, I have to make this film and we have to send it to festival, whatever it is, jam, love to jam. Every song, every song can't be a hit, but the more times you get to just go and get better and get your hours in and do the thing, the healthier it is, the more you're doing what you were born to do. All the other reasons that we need to do it, the emergency reasons, the responsibility reasons, it was like the need for our creative expression to suddenly pay our bills is a disease that almost everybody has. And the people who are succeeding the hardest, the strongest, besides the people who just go pro, turn pro, always pro, and it was like, is a love of the thing itself, because it just can't quit on you then. It can never fail you. And I've always done that. And I think when people who see me and promote and let me come back and do 4 years of commercials like Izod or whatever it is, it was like, it's because it's my enthusiasm and how much I'm willing to eat shit on a daily basis from everybody on that team without without letting it depress me, even though it does.
Right.
That's the spirit.
Well, okay, so that leads me to a question that Freddie has.
Sorry. Yeah.
No. Freddie, go ahead and elaborate a little bit on what your question was.
So my question is, obviously you gotta be able to showcase your talent, like specifically you gotta have camera skills and editing skills, or at least kind of know what you're doing. Are there any other non-technical skills that you've developed that you didn't realize would have been like really important or helpful throughout your career?
My career in which aspect, like the directing in particular and filmmaking?
Yeah, yes.
I mean, I love all of it. I love writing. I love all of it. But you know what? Like, because I had the bug of an actor. I wasn't a good actor, and I only say that because now I'd be much, much better. I didn't have control over my nerves, so I had like acute stage fright. But I forced myself to be an actor like through my entire childhood, not knowing that, like, why do I feel like I'm being electrocuted by thousands of volts when I get on stage? It was but I actually got to get over it by throwing myself into it. So I think knowing yourself enough to know what are you afraid of because it excites you versus afraid of like, no, I'm not interested in that. Well, we know the things we're just not interested in, but the things that excite us that we're also afraid of, to really go and try them and do them without, and one of them can be, I think, working, either becoming an actor or working with actors, because I think, I gotta tell you, storytelling and the relationships with the team, whether it's behind the camera or in front of the camera, those relationships, the interpersonal skills of those relationships, enjoying yourself, or just enjoying working hard with other people who enjoy working hard. Like, it can look like anything, but that's really the lifeblood of like these endeavors. Like, and if you feel alone and you don't feel like you have your tribe to sort of share that with, you know, you're sort of missing. Like, I think a neat thing that's happening to me recently, and I'll try not to go down a separate rabbit hole, is these people I've known for a long time. None of us we're not A-list talent, or none of us are superstars. We're just not. But after a certain amount of time, the people you've known and worked with for a long time, they really do, everyone just levels up and you're all there for each other, and it's really neat. And so as far as non-technical stuff to do, I say get into your turn-ons, and I mean that in a very broad, non-sexual sense. I mean, like, what are you into? And it can be anything. And by honoring that and then finding your tribe separately, those are separate things. Not just your filmmaking tribe, but like understanding the things that you enjoy. People just respond really positively to that. They want that in a cheerleader. They want that in a leader. I think the age of what I'll say the jerk directors behind the camera, there was an age that I was, as I came into this business, I was talking about 1999, Comedy Central. The 90s were filled with really talented directors who were complete blowhards and were just sloppy as hell. And everybody was like, oh, but he's so great, and the work was so great, you know, whatever. So he can treat everybody like crap, or, you know, whoever. That's gone. We can make a feature film with our phone. You can take that to a real festival, and you can have a real audience. If you have a story that really should be heard, or you want to just try and shape it, and 100 times, you have as many at-bats. There is no pressure except yourself. And what's amazing is that story will get better and better. This is what comedians do. They do it the hardest way possible. As filmmakers, we forget that this is necessary, but we have to tell our stories. We have to find our stories, and then we have to work on them 100 times like Van Gogh until we actually have a version of it that we think is powerful enough to be worth sharing. And it's okay to fail. So those are my biggest, like, and I'm really speaking to myself and less to anyone out there. It's like I've had to sort of like learn to do that the hardest way possible. Every time being extra idealistic, every single time it's going to be the best thing I've ever done.
Right. You know,
I think that answers your question, but I feel like that's how I feel about it.
No, that's great. That's a great answer, because what it does is it really sort of changes perspective. Because I know that, you know, today's industry and today's market and all the YouTube channels and stuff, like, we're really, really, really heavily focused on gear. There's tons of conversation on gear. I mean, you do a podcast on like the creative art of whatever, and you get like 1/10 of the views that you'll get if you go and do something on oh, this is the latest DSLR, right? But gear does play a part in what we do. And so what I'm wondering is should we focus more on telling the story with the gear that we have? Or like, how do you feel about gear? Where do you fall?
I'm a gearhead, but let me tell you what's real. So like the greatest piece I've ever made, if you want to go and find it, is sitting right on my website at adamreid.tv, adamreid.tv. It's called Just Like That, J-Date Just Like That. It was shot with like a first generation iPhone and maybe a flip cam. You guys remember the flip cam? It had one little button on the back.
Yeah.
It was sort of my favorite device of all time. And it's sad if I could still like make the perfect modern flip cam. I mean, I'm sure people have tried, but there's something about that particular device. So I made this little film, and it was actually for my wife, and I gave it to her the night before we got married. So it became a J-Date commercial. And this thing I cut together on a laptop. It might have even been this laptop. No, too long ago, but only barely this laptop. So I cut it together the day before the wedding on my laptop. My point, it's still on my reel. I'm still tremendously proud of it. There is no gear, okay? So what I get off on is, I love going out with my A7S, with my Voigtlander E to M mount adapter, with the 40 millimeter, oh my God, my 40 millimeter Voigtlander lens. That's like a 1.4. I could live with that thing fused on, and it should be the only camera I ever use. But since the stupid XS came out, I don't even carry it around anymore. And I fetishize the hell out of that camera, like my life. And now I have a Leica Q, and it's a fabulous beast for photography. And it's a pleasure to shoot with. None of this matters. It just doesn't. Now, it'll matter differently if you're a professional who's expected to deliver a job. When it doesn't matter is if you're a storyteller and you're trying to just use any medium to tell your story and have a voice. The most powerful things happening right now aren't normal, and they're on other channels and other platforms or snaps, and there can be storytelling is absolutely everywhere. The Tiny Chef show is a perfect example. 90% of it is shot on a phone. And it looks gorgeous, but it's also very real and vivid. It has a certain, authenticity has a storytelling value. And I think every single project, every single one, whether it's a 5-second stop motion or like the story of our lives, you can have a conversation with yourself about what medium and what format and how big of a team is really required to tell the story. And sometimes style requires a ton, and you just go, well, fuck, that's just what it needs to be. And that's when we get out the big guns, and we get really smart and work small.
So you start at the story and then let that decide the equipment that you need. Right? I mean, if you don't need big equipment, then but just tell the story. So with those kind of things in mind, and I'm looking at my friend Freddie over here, because I can tell like he's having a huge man crush right now. But if you're gonna build a reel, right? Like if you're gonna build a portfolio with video, and to me, video is a little foreign to me because I do photography. So what would you suggest to somebody like Freddie? Like, hey, you're going to go build a reel. You need to put content out there in the world. You need to be able to show your skills. What are people looking for?
I think the mistake is thinking about what are people looking for. And the challenge again, and forgive me if I sound like a broken record, but I'll be more specific, is think about what you're looking for. The problem most people have is that their taste level is higher than their technical ability. So they enjoy great work. We go to the movies. We're really good audience members, right? We know what we love about the films and the screenplays and the stories that we love. That doesn't mean we feel like we are capable of executing at that level. So what's really important, I think, for me is constantly finding a way to sort of engage the things that I'm interested in, And it's as they uniquely intersect with other things that I'm interested in. And that sounds very masturbatory when I put it that way. But here's what's interesting. By being so specific and not catering to like some imaginary audience, by sitting here and catering to the truest audience you have, by finding your own truth and then polishing that,
right.
And you actually end up, you become more universal almost instantly. People recognize the purity of this new thing that you've created at the intersection of your turn-ons, and you find your tribe that much quicker.
Right. No, it makes perfect sense, and I'm glad that you expressed it that way, because I firmly believe the same thing. Like, you create the art that's your art for you, and you'll find the audience that will enjoy that. It's
so the same thing goes for reel posting, right? We're talking about what to show, and it goes equally so for photography. So I don't see even a remote difference for sharing any of your branding on any of your content, no matter what kind of an artist you're putting yourself out as. Even if you're not even putting yourself as an artist, you're putting yourself out as a human. This could apply just to anything. You have a responsibility to yourself to push it as far as you can towards the kind of work that you want to be doing, if you know what that is. Most people's problem is they don't know what they like. If you have a vision and you have an idea and you have taste and you're excited by things, pushing your work towards that. Do you not put the range? No, you do. But you're only as good as your worst piece. So every day or every month or every year is a chance to shake yourself off and be like, I can let that part of myself go. It was the best of me 3 years ago. It's not who I am anymore. And if one day you're looking back and you go, oh wait, that amazing picture, that amazing little clip of that skateboarding thing, I wasn't even thinking that was on my fucking thing. I took that, you go, that's like the favorite thing I ever did. And that, guess what? Every day you get a chance to unshake the tree and put it right back in where it belongs. And nothing is truly gone, but to constantly allow yourself to reinvent, to reorient towards what excites you, and to let your portfolio do this heavy lifting of projecting on your audience the type of work that you'd be good for. Even if you're not quite where you want to be yet, it has to point that direction. You can see you'll just slide the other way. You know, shit work isn't going to get more good work. And if you have something better, how many pieces? This is another thing I see constantly, and I don't look at a lot of work, but this is for any business. But too much. I can't get, people don't like to read, and they also don't like to watch 25 minutes of video. So it's like, how can you quickly sort of give people a sense that you really know what you're doing and you have great taste with just a few pieces?
So the question
yeah, it depends.
Yeah. So the question I was going to ask was, and you kind of answered it already, is how much do you put out there? How many pieces do you put in your portfolio? Do you put on the website? I mean, we're talking.
Well, I'm a terrible example because I'm sitting here preaching one thing, but I'm trying to hit so many lanes on my site. And what I've done with my career, and it's a larger thing to unpack. So this is a little bit of do as I say, not as I do, except that if you look closely, then you go to the commercials page. I don't know, you'll see maybe 6 tops, 8 spots on the commercials page. But that's all my commercials that I'm showing you. So that's like the high end, 6, right? If I was talking to another commercial director and they had felt like they had enough work. But listen, it gets really, really dicey really quickly, because as a comedy director alone, I should have 3 or 4 killer comedy spots. I happen to have different genres now. I didn't always, and not even until very recently, been like, oh, I can create a really good comedy reel and a really good touching, sentimental, not comedy reel. And I have a bra reel now. I mean, that's weird. I'm not sending out the bra reel, but it's like, oh, I can do these different things. I want to get more of this comedy work. So now you'll see the weighting start to go over towards the comedy, but I want people to still know who I am, the range of myself as an artist, right? So Just Like That is still there. Lean Cuisine Night Nurse is still there. And what this does, and this is actually important, ready? Between your greatest pieces that are different, and this is a constant theme because I'm talking about our greatest turn-ons that are different. Now I'm talking about our greatest pieces that are different. okay, our audience can see and feel how dynamic a human we are between the gap. So if they're really different, you're like, man, the same person who created this really crazy, whatever, cage match with, you know, MMA fighters in suits, did this really sensitive, sweet, you know, whatever it is. It's like they suddenly get a sense of what's possible and what you're capable of. So if you're into different things, I think you can triangulate those. What you don't want to do is necessarily just seem like you're really all over the place. And I will say, for the most part, this world really tends to favor focus and mastery of and really ownership of a certain look, voice, type. No matter what it is, it's like if you can find your groove, people tend to want to see that. I've just been a very manic resistant personality to that. And as soon as I do something like make a feature film, I'm like, oh, I have to go over here and like invent a video game. I don't know. I want to make more films, but it's like, there's this neat, I get excited by trying on these different formats and pushing myself to do things I haven't done before.
Right. So the you had mentioned, I don't know if it was during the recording or not, but you had mentioned that the Tiny Chef was a side project. Like you had started that as a side project.
Well, we always had big vision, but I mean, it could not be tinier. Yeah.
Well, how did that? So you know, you're doing all these other projects, right? Like you're working.
I can tell you exactly how that came to be. Yeah.
But how did Tiny Chef come about? I mean,
yeah. So here's just the raw facts. So I went to a film festival in 2010 in Oregon, and with my feature film Hello Lonesome, which is the first film I made, and I meet this woman who's a stop motion animator. And we become friends, but I not only like very casually, like on Facebook, like she was in another doc. She has actually played a runner in the doc as herself, as a stop motion animator. And I remember, if I have a vague memory, she was actually drinking on this big major run, like the Hood to Coast run, but her team decided to do it drunk. And I just thought, what a funny person. And so we've been friends on Facebook, and cut to 10 years. And this is what I'm talking about, like your tribe, like you just don't know, like what. All my greatest things, everything is so random. If I told you the story of Barry and Joe is random, this is random. She's posting like pretzels the size of like your fingertip. You know, you can go and look at all this stuff at tinychefshow.com or on our Instagram at the Tiny Chef Show. And I'm like, you know, she doesn't know this, but I'm here with my then 6-year-old son. This is just 8 months ago. You know, making things out of clay that are tiny. I just like to play with clay. You know, of course I do. But I'm like, what is she doing? That pretzel looks real. I want to eat that dime-sized pretzel, right? And she's really good. And the reason is she has fucking experience, right? I don't know what she's been up to. I'm not really paying attention to her Facebook feed. But I've always liked Rachel. So I'm like, I write her. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing with this tiny food? And she's like, oh, I have this idea for this Tiny Chef show. And she introduces me. She tells me about her friend Ozzy. They were working on Isle of Dogs. So Isle of Dogs is the Wes Anderson stop motion movie that, you know, is, you know, was apparently a brutal process to work on. And they hated everything about the process, but it begat and gave me and us, in a way, the Tiny Chef, because Ozzy and Rachel bonded. And Ozzy, you know, told Rachel, is like, oh, Rachel had this little green character that she'd been animating, but he was not a chef. He was very much the chef before he got an apron and a hat and a purpose. And Ozzy, and she was making the food already, but Ozzy was like, why don't you make him a chef? and this is how things begin.
You need to describe.
You're a stop motion animator who had frankly just become disgruntled with constantly being really under the thumb of much larger production teams on these very large projects, when really they're just required to really shoot, direct, animate huge chunks of these films, you know, for over years, wanted to make something of her own. So we started kind of like, anything I can do. And this is something I think everybody can relate to, because I wasn't necessarily looking at how do I invade this project? How do I make it my own? When we love something, we lay ourselves down to serve it. And the stories or ideas that I have made that have been on my own or that I've done for big brands or other teams, every single one is an act of love in this very cheesy way that we just become at service of the thing. And it may not always feel altruistic. A lot of times it's just a job and a brand and you just don't care. But you become at the service of the band that you've pulled together to do the thing, and you have your own human connection, and that's real. So what happened with Tiny Chef, I'll end the Tiny Chef story. It gets very short quickly. First I built the website because I can. Then we started really focusing on the Instagram and kind of coming up with what to do with it and what to post. And, you know, Rachel did everything from a shed in New Zealand, and this was the time difference of 17 hours in the future. And we're just like nowhere near each other. So the space and time was not on our side. This was only 8 months ago. Ozzy came to visit from London, so we got a little more extra animation. So we started animating on the regular. I'm writing ideas. I'm a writer. I'm hyper creative. I'm just going, hey, what about this? What about that? Killed all the things you don't like. I'm hyper collaborative. I'm like, you know, we just make all these decisions about this character, and half of them are wrong, and we make them again, and then they're right. And we're sharing them with an audience. And we go from 5,000 followers just 6 months ago, now 5,000 followers, to 340,000 followers.
Wow.
And if you look at those followers, that'd be kind of impressive to me, maybe, if I didn't know anything about Instagram, and I didn't really before we did this. But what's amazing is how committed all those people are on the comments to him as a real thing. And like, and this is way out of my control. So the coolest things, the coolest projects, they genuinely have a life of their own, like children. And our role in shepherding them into the world is a little more like being a parent. And I feel like all my projects are sort of like, I want the best for them. I will always look out for them. Of course I fucking care. I couldn't be more proud when amazing things happen to the projects I begin. But you know what? They're not me. And I think knowing that, and sometimes they feel like they're me anyway. Like, you know, the way a child can feel like your heart.
Right.
But they're not. They're outside of you, and we can't control them or how the world receives them. We can only love them, do the best we can, root for them, give them, you know, like the giving tree.
Right. And your work, you know, going back to what you said originally, you're working on the things that you're passionate about. That's you, right? Not just things because somebody else will like them, or that's the technical direction I should go, or maybe that's going to get me the most exposure, because, you know, you're not going to do the best work for that.
Well, it's impossible to know where one ends and one begins, and we can tell ourselves really crazy stories. So I don't want to seem like a complete hypocrite. There's an intersection in the things that excite us that we think we can get other people excited about. And I don't want to discourage people from, you know, getting really turned on by really popular things. But I will say it's more important that you find a way in that's a little singular. And that can become the kernel and the fire that will either, you know, that can light all that other stuff up. And everything you said is true. It's like, it's better. Everything is best served. But you know what? I get it when it's also a job. So there's many, many times where you get up early in the morning and you go to set, and it's not because you're excited about what you're going to do there or even the role you have. And I think, I sometimes feel that way. It's very rare, but I sometimes feel that way, and I never leave that way. It's always, and I think the writing is the same thing. You know, beginning is very often the very hardest part. And like working out, maybe, you know, it's like, it's just hard to get going. But once you get the engine turned, this stuff is all automatic and muscle, and you're much more guaranteed success by virtue of just enjoying the process, I feel.
That's amazing. All right. So Nick had a question, but Nick, your microphone's not working, right? Is that what Nope. No microphone from Nick.
I like it. 2 words. Like it.
Well, the answer, Nick, is 42. Whatever your question is, the answer is going to be 42. If you text me the question, Nick, I will be happy to ask it.
You can just send it directly to my brain.
Yeah, yeah. So that transitions me to this project right here.
The Adventures of Barry and Joe.
Yes, I mean, because I'm inspired by the fact that you're very energetic about following your passion. So I think that's very, very cool. And I being involved in my industry, it's very much the same way. When I find somebody to mentor, they're focused on gear and what lens are you using, what aperture, what shutter speed, how many times do I need to post on Instagram? And I'm like, whoa.
Every 8 minutes.
What do you want to shoot? What do you want to go create? And I think it's amazing to hear you say that.
You have to make it sustainable for you and for your life. So it only starts. And the other thing I'll say is, like, it's really hard because, creating art in any area, like real art in any field at all, whether it's professional or not, it really doesn't matter. Is really like an act of lunacy, right? We kind of know this. We've been trained this. We go, there's a million reasons not to do these things. They're not very practical. They take up time. They take up time from our family. They take up resources. It's not, the odds are against us. There's so many people doing it. I've explained that. So, like, all that logic. It's amazing when you care about something or you enjoy it, like the free solo guy. How bad example right at this moment, because what I'm about to say is everyone around you recognizes the importance of that thing and really rallies around it. Everybody loves to, where it gets impossible to make your dreams come true is when you don't believe in them. And sort of like, and you don't have to think big to take the very next smallest step towards things that you enjoy. And that's really what our job is. It was like, gosh, I really should be writing more. If it's a writing thing, I do that to myself. It was like, it's like, okay, now we know. We've identified the fucking problem. It's not a big mystery. And a lot of people could spend another 10 years still dealing with that one. It was like, I just don't know what to tell you. But you've identified at least one area where you might be able to help yourself. And it's not going to come easy. Nothing comes easy.
Right.
You won't even enjoy it at the beginning. It's just like diving into the pool. It was like, what did you fucking expect? You pick up a guitar. You're not going to be like, I will never get blisters. This will be a breeze.
Right. So Nick was asking, he says, do you ever get dry spells? Like, in your work, like, do you ever, how do you deal with those?
There's always dry spells. It's all a dry spell.
So when you're dry spell, are you panic that you're not doing a project, or is in your dry spell is you're like, thank God I have nothing going on. I'm going to work on something else.
What the was about, because when I was talking about other stuff completely. No, there's different things. Okay, from a professional, like, I feed my family. I just want to be really blunt. There is no amount of success. Like, I'm barely getting by. And what we do is I feed my family through the commercials. The commercials have been a little more fallow this year, but I've been spending so much of my time and energy. I wrote a book. We kicked off a new stop motion animation series. It's sort of like, these are big things. I also have been doing the commercial work, but it always slows down. That's a wonderful time. And what I usually do is if it's genuinely slower, I'll double down and retreat. I'll write a whole project in the slow period from like where I feed. Like, if I can't get work professionally, I will absolutely invest my time personally in my dreams, my personal passions. So that's one. I was going to two-part this, but I forgot the second part.
Well, that's good. That's good advice. So we're getting near the end of the hour. Yeah, which is, what's time? It's like what? Like almost 11 o'clock. No, it's 8.
Oh, yeah. No, it will. Well, I just show you. It'll be interesting because in about 6-7 more minutes, you'll watch me actually just power down, right?
Oh,
Jen Adams gently snoring. How adorable.
That's all right. We'll bring David in, and he can impersonate your voice and say there's no video. But I did.
One dry spell note was not about getting stuck in your head and I think feeling like you have no ideas. That's the other side of that.
Keep going. Keep doing your stuff. Yeah. So the Barry and Joe book. I mean, this is no small project, right? Like, this is a big project. There is an enormous amount of illustration in here. A lot of really witty commentary. You know, this takes a long time to put this together. So, I mean,
Didn't get that much time. It was really thrown together over the summer. I'd say it was primarily written and drawn in about 2.5 months over the summer. And a lot of the ideas.
This is the guy who does it, right? Like for the rest of us, we're like, what? That's like a 2-year project.
Yeah, it takes an army and it takes a village. So I did do all the writing myself, and that was a crazy thing because it's where I learned that I can really write. Like now I'm excited to maybe try and write other books. You know, like you'll notice there's like a lot of prose in there, and if anyone's interested, there's also an audiobook which I read, which was a lot of fun to do, to go into the booth and read the audiobook and to be able to read your own book. I mean, you guys have to understand, it's like this is all nerd heaven. You know, I can't quite, you know, feed the family quite properly. I'm traveling just a click more than I probably should. I'm working crazy hours that are not healthy, and trying to be a parent at the same time. But at the flip side, it was like there are moments of nerd nirvana, like reading the book or working with all the comic book artists. I don't know if anybody can see, but if you hold it up, it's like there's crazy illustrations in the book. It's there's entire graphic novels in there and prose, and it's like 224 pages. And I don't know if you noticed, but if you flip the pages too, there's even a flip book.
I love that.
It's some crazy shit. And what a weird moment for politics and even Joe Biden. I mean, we need another hour to unpack that. But it was just it's a really silly idea. I didn't know that there was another book that was going to be coming out when I started working on it, about the bromance. But this is different because it's a time travel. It's really, really ridiculous.
Yeah.
It just doesn't let up.
Yeah, no, I
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. That's on sale everywhere books are sold, and then on Kindle and audio too, which is cool.
Well, you know, the thing it's neat. It's neat to promote that, but at the same time, like I realize this takes a lot of work, and this is your art. Like what you talked about in the beginning, like you're doing what you're passionate about, and it's so easy to think like, oh, you know, I need to go this direction because that's where the business is, so that's where the money is, or maybe that's what my friends are telling me to do, and maybe a portion of that, you know, is what you have to do. But you know, being a creative, this was your being a creative, right? This is you.
Well, there's the front door and the side door. We don't have quite enough time to unpack it. But the short thing is like you kind of have our job is to do both, right?
Right.
Like you got to show up, and you got to go. If you're an actor, you got to go to auditions, and if you're a director, you got to direct stuff. And if you're, you know, it's like if you're a comedian, you got to go to open mics. And if you're an astronaut, you got to go get in something crazy and
get off the couch, go do something.
Yeah, I don't know, but you got to go do the thing. So that's just, that tends to be the big one. That tends to be the big one. The passion stuff is really different. It's like it's our real jobs. Where none of us are going to be happy if there isn't a part of us that's doing it. It may not even be art. It could be exercise or travel or food. People find themselves through any number of things. So I just think that we become the people, our heroes who became like real masters of things. It's like the Malcolm Gladwell book, right? Outliers, if you've read that. It's like, that really holds up. It's like, it's the people who found their calling earliest, stuck to it in a crazy way. It fed them, it fueled them, it drove them. And then of course they turn around and they're so far ahead. Right. But I think success in our heart can be really similar. It was like, but it starts today. Every day we have a little bit of a job. Most of us aren't lucky enough, and myself included, to spend all of our time doing what we love and getting paid for it. But if we don't carve out a little bit every day, there's no chance. There's no hope.
Right. So Amelia, she asks tips for maintaining creativity. She says, mine goes out the window when I'm working a lot and I'm tired. You know,
I can't stress a good shower enough, and I mean that in the most honest way possible. Like anything that resets your brain and relaxes you, anything to shake the Etch-a-Sketch. Because I find for myself personally, because I'll just try and pump out as much content as I can all day. And I pride myself now on being able to turn myself on like a faucet and write. And it was not always that way, ever. And it's just the new muscles came. And but I think knowing what your reset is, for my wife, it would be a walk in the woods. For me, it's a good shower. I'm like a new person. And then really escaping the thing that you've been concentrating on. The other thing is, like, you know what? When you're working too hard, like trying to think of an idea, if we're really talking about the creative work and not like a job, but like you're challenging yourself to push yourself to be more creative, to express yourself creatively. Sometimes you just rub something raw. You know, it's a story you have to tell. You know, there's goodness in the idea, and you become fixated on trying to solve it. And a great way to solve it is to go do something else. And I don't mean just in a short-term capacity. My favorite projects, Barry and Joe, is a weird amalgamation of 100 other thoughts I've had my whole life. And they just, and even stories inside of it, like the bar from Casablanca being there and filled with all the greatest Americans of all time. This is inside of Joe's dreams in a chapter called Eternal Sunshine of the Trumpless Mind. And basically, Obama has to incept Biden, go inside of his dreams and wake him up. This is all under the guidance of Samuel L. Jackson, who's in the lab before they lose him. But this is an idea about this that I've had for years before I knew that it was going to be Obama and Joe Biden, about this bar in Casablanca that was really purgatory. All our old ideas are ghosts, and they just haunt us the rest of our lives. So you don't really shake them, and the best ones are really good ghosts. They come back. And so you can actually ditch them on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. And if it's really a good idea, it'll come right back to you and make sure you do it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Look at that. You took a breath right at the 7:58 mark. That's amazing.
Sometimes. No, I say this all with a grain of salt. I don't think anybody really knows anything. But I do like finding joy in it. And I think that's the best advice I have.
I absolutely love the enthusiasm, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing all that. And it's inspiring as a creative myself, and I know that there's many of us here that are creatives. This is kind of my tribe. This is the group that we hang out with a lot. You know, it's you have to inspire each other. You know, sometimes when we hear it just from each other, it doesn't have the same weight as when somebody, you know, across the continent says, well, you know, hey, this works for me. So that's good news.
Have fun, be disruptive, knock on the front door, but always just take the side door and break it down with your friends. There's so many ways to be disruptive now, and there's never been more tools. And I really do believe like our phones are the future. It's fucking nuts. Yeah. So as much as that's sick and weird, it's we can just push it, you know, like have fun with it.
Right. Well, hey, that is the show, guys. That's an hour.
This was awesome. I'm so grateful for the questions, the thoughtful questions, and all the time and listening to me filibuster.
I appreciate you coming on. If I will put more of your information in the YouTube show notes. So if anybody, you know, watches this later, it's down there. And go check out his stuff. I'm not going to give this book back to David, by the way. I don't know what it takes for David.
I'll get him another one. I'll send it to him. No problem. We'll make more. We need people to
I love it.
AdamReid.tv, The Adventures of Barry and Joe, TheTinyChefShow.com.
Yeah, I was just going to end with that. Like, if somebody just wants to go find you and all the cool stuff that you do, because I got like 5 website addresses and 3 Instagrams.
AdamReid.tv. AdamReid.tv.
AdamReid.tv. That's where they would go to find.
TV, and you can watch everything and get a real snapshot, and you can get to any of those other content portals.
Perfect. Hey, thank you. Thank you for coming along. I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream. Thank everybody for watching.
Thank you, everybody. Cheers.